Hey, Rufus, wake up! It's showtime! All right, 1, 2, 3.
Howdy, folks. I'm Joshua Orro the Mustang Prince. Welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. You know, out of all the attractions it shows at Disneyland Resort, there is one fantastic show that stood out as my absolute childhood favorite. And that show was the Country Bear Jamboree. Ever since I was a child, I could never forget the characters, the songs, including the hilarious gags that these living animal heads make throughout the show. I even love the Vacation Hoedown songs, including the holiday versions. Every time I went to visit Disneyland, I always went to visit the Bears show. But then, on September 8, 2001, my heart suddenly broke when I found out that the show was going to be shut down for good. And I've been really upset ever since. But in the following summer, I saw a movie that starred the Bears, and it really blew me away. Released on July 26, 2002, the movie is, well, The Country Bears. Now let's get started. Barry Barrington, a young 10-year-old bear raised by a human family in a world where humans and talking bears coexist, attempts to trace his own roots. He meets up with his heroes, the Country Bears, a band who have broken up since their 1991 hibernation tour. In order to save the Country Bear Hall from being torn down, Barry helps the Country Bears reunite for one final concert. So, my thoughts on this film? Well, it did manage to cheer me up after the show was taken from Disneyland. The movie was toe-tapping, heartwarming, and funny at some parts, but overall, it was awesome. However, I don't have much trivia to say for this movie, other than the fact that this film was filmed in Franklin, Tennessee, as well as various locations in California. The animatronic bear suits filmed in the movie was used by Jim Henson's Creature Shop. Now, this wouldn't be a Country Bear film without some great songs. The original music was composed by Christopher Young, and the songs were written by Brian Setzer, John Hyatt, Jimmy Title, Crystal Harris, and Bella Fleck. Now, to be honest, the songs that I love in this film are the ones that are not sung in the background. For example, there is I'm Only In It for the Honey, Where Nobody Knows My Name, Straight to the Heart of Love, Kick It Into Gear, The Kid in You, Let It Ride, and Can Love Stand the Test? And now it's time to move on to the cast of this film, starting with the bear characters. Now our main character, Barry Barrington, is voiced by Sora himself, Haley Joel Osment, who happens to be one of my favorite actors of all time. Barry is an optimistic bear cub who idolizes the Country Bears, and when he finds out that the Country Bear Hall is about to be torn down, he wants to do everything he can to help get the bears back together in order to save it. I mean, hey, if I found back then, I should have done the same thing when they were about to tear down the show at Disneyland as well. Next we have Henry Taylor, the MC and manager of the Country Bears, who was voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, who at the same year was Captain Gantu in Disney's Lilo and Stitch. Now, in my opinion, Henry looks like an older version of the Henry at Disneyland. Anyway, Henry's a great character. I mean, he's well-mannered and great support supportive character. Not to mention that he's my second favorite character in this movie, though. Next is Big Al, the sluggish and elderly property caretaker for the Country Bear Hall, who is voiced by James Gaiman. Now, he doesn't sing in this film like he did at Disneyland, but what he does is getting the Country Bear Hall set up for the concert, and he's very protective of the grass out front. Now we move on to the Country Bears band members themselves. But before I do, here's a picture of what they used to look like at Disneyland. First up, we have Fred Betterhead, who's voiced by Brad Garrett. He plays the harmonica and a bass. Fred also has invented the stage dive, which he hasn't used too much throughout this movie, though. Next we have Zeb Zuber, who is voiced by Stephen Root. He's the fiddle player of the band, and he's also the most naive member as well. He also had a big addiction to honey. Tennessee O'Neill, who is voiced by Toby Hughes, is the one-string thang player. He's also the most sensitive in the band as well. Mostly he's been crying due to losing his sweetheart Trixie, and he'd do anything to get her back. Speaking of which, Trixie St. Clair is voiced by Candy Ford, who actually sounds almost exactly like the Trixie at Disneyland. I mean, in the movie, not only is Trixie a fantastic singer, but she's also a keyboard player for the Bears. And lastly, the leader of the band, Ted Betterhead, who is voiced by Diedrich Bader. And thank goodness this was before he was in that awful animated Dinotopia movie. Anyway, Ted is the lead singer and guitar player for the band. Ted was also the reason why the Country Bears broke up. He refused to go back to singing with his friends until Barry helped him open his eyes. However, in my eyes, Ted seems like another father figure for Barry, which kind of might explain why Ted is my absolute favorite character in this film. Now let's move on to the human actors. Starting with Barry's human family, like Mr. Norbert Barrington, played by Stephen Tobolsky, Mrs. Barrington, played by Megan Fay, and Barry's brother, Dexter Barrington, played by Ellie Marienthal. Now, I already said that Diedrich Bader voices Ted Betterhead, but he also plays Officer Cheats. Along with him is his partner, Officer Ham, played by Daryl Mitchell. Next up is Rhodey, who's played by MC Gainey. Rhodey is the tour bus driver for the Country Bears, who also doubles as the band's drummer. He also owns a pet chicken named Mr. Chicken, who's actually a female. Next, we have Rip Holland, played by Alex Rocco. Rip is the former promoter of the Country Bears, and I don't have that much to say about him, but the villain for the film, Reed Thimble, aka Benny Boxwaggle, who's played by Christopher Walken, is the armpit musician and a banker who plots to destroy Country Bear Hall after years of being beaten by the Country Bears in a talent show. We also have great cameos that appear in the movie, like Jennifer Page, Don Henley, John Hyatt, Elton John, Queen Latifah, Willie Nelson, Bonnie Raitt, Brian Setzer, Crystal Harris, Don Watts, and Exhibit. And now to move on to my final words of this movie. Above all, not only did the Country Bears manage to cheer me up after the show closed down at Disneyland, but it was such a fantastic movie with fantastic toe-tapping country songs and memorable characters. I just wish there was a way to bring back the show to Disneyland, maybe even put it in California Adventure. However, every time I watch the movie, I can't help but look back at my childhood memories of the original show, along with the Vacation Hoedown and the Christmas Hoedown as well. So I have to give this movie a rating of a full 100%. Well, that's all for now, folks. Be sure to join me next time, because my next vlog will take us to the Johto region. See you next time, everybody. Mustang Power!